Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to talk about Steve Perry and why everyone loves his voice. Now, no voice was probably better for FM radio than Steve Perry. He owned FM radio, and every time you heard him, he just made you feel good. And live, he was impeccable. He just didn't make mistakes, whether he was singing the stuff that he wrote or co-wrote or singing covers as Journey sometimes did in their early live shows with Steve Perry. They would really let loose and play some blues and other stuff. Such talented musicians, because of course everyone in the band was a virtuoso in their own right, and including Steve Perry, a virtuoso vocalist, and they would just have so much fun. But what is it about his voice, aside from never making mistakes, that we all love so much? Well, one of the most obvious things is his range. He has a lot of range, which put simply means he can go really high up there and really low without ever straining himself. In other words, without shouting, without going into a falsetto, without making your voice sort of artificially low, sort of heavy metal style. He can sing comfortably in his natural voice across a wide range. And that gives him a very broad musical, emotional palette to paint with, which is really important when you're trying to convey the kind of gut-wrenching music that Journey is. Because Journey music, it's all about making you feel something, usually making you feel good, sometimes about making you reminisce, feel, tears of joy you can imagine at the end of Don't Stop Believing and all of that. But it's music for the masses in the best possible way. It's music written to touch everyone. It's meant to convey universal experiences. And the other interesting thing about this is that what Journey shows is that the masses do not only react to, but they respond to. They instinctively respond to virtuosity. This is true about the instrumentalists in Journey, but it's also true about Steve Perry. It's one thing to have a loud voice or a distinct voice or even a wild voice, but Steve Perry's voice is virtuosic and people respond to it. So whenever some snobbish critic comes on some channel and says, "Oh, people don't understand musical virtuosity, they want simplicity," that isn't true at all, because one of the reasons that Steve Perry's voice is considered one of the most beloved of all time by the millions of people who bought the records and the people who went to the shows is because people instantly recognize virtuosity when that virtuosity is mobilized in the spirit of making people feel the kinds of emotions that are just below the surface. You don't need to think about the emotions, because that really contradicts the very concept of a visceral experience, an emotional experience. If you had to think about it, if it was cerebral music, you'd actually be so distracted, so lost in your own thoughts, you wouldn't be able to get that emotional hit that really gets you. And it takes so much talent to elicit that in people. But Steve Perry had just that kind of voice. He was definitely someone who refined his talents, but like all truly great singers, he definitely was someone who was born with it. His tone was such that his voice almost blended in with the instruments, which is very interesting because some voices are so distinct that they sort of ride over the instruments in any particular band and stick out. Where one of the reasons I would attest that Perry's voice was so good on FM radio is because the tone and timbre blended in so well with the instruments in the band. And he used his voice like a guitarist would use a guitar, frankly, or like a violinist would use a violin. He really had a musical sense of singing. His phrasing was more like an instrumentalist than a lot of other singers. And that just helped create such cohesion in the songs that it frankly made the listening experience, again, less cerebral and more emotive. Truly one of the finest singers of all time. I mentioned in a video before, Freddie Mercury is one of the best frontmen of all time and one of the best singers, but Steve Perry, for the voice alone, you could make that argument that as a pure singer, Steve Perry may well be the very best of all time in his genre and maybe even beyond. A true legend, which is why not easy to replace, but he's happy and we should be too because we've got the music. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Take care.